President Lee has arrived in Brazil for a 3-day state visit, the first stop on his three-nation South America tour, where he'll hold summit talks with President Lula da Silva on defense industry cooperation and resuming trade negotiations. The U.S. has paused strikes on Iran for a second straight night to allow room for diplomacy, even as both Washington and Tehran signal that tensions and the threat of renewed military action remain far from resolved. Chairing a virtual meeting with senior aides from Brasilia, President Lee ordered for Korea's fuel price caps and tax cuts to stay in place until global oil prices stabilize, calling for preemptive measures against inflation risks from tensions in the Middle East. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. We begin with President Lee arrival in Brazil, the first leg of his three-nation tour of South America, after wrapping up a series of business events in the U.S. He will sit down with his Brazilian counterpart, Lula da Silva, for talks on economic security. Our Blue House correspondent Yo-jong reports from Brasilia.
Upon arrival in Brazil for a 3-day state visit, President Lee and First Lady Kim Hae-kyung toured Brazil's C-390 transport aircraft, soon to be introduced in Korea. The president called it the beginning of defense industry cooperation between the two countries. Presidents Lee and Luis Inácio Lula da Silva last met at the expanded G7 summit in France and held a bilateral summit in Seoul in February. In a written interview with FA News Agency, the South Korean president said he sees ties with South America entering a new phase. He added that reliable partners are needed more than ever in times of rising protectionism and supply chain disruptions. The talks on Monday will involve an official welcoming ceremony, expanded talks, an exchange of MOUs, a joint press conference, and lunch. South Korea is looking to expand trade and investments in South America, for which they will seek resuming negotiations for the Korea-Mercosur trade agreement.
We expect to dramatically increase trade with these countries and support our companies making inroads into the South American market.
Also on the agenda is enhancing cooperation in critical minerals and creating synergy with Korea's advanced technology. Korea is also looking to expand its diplomatic horizons to the global south.
Brazil is the 5th largest country by area and the 7th largest by population. It not only leads the order in the South American region, but also provides active leadership in the UN and G20.
Following a flurry of diplomacy in recent weeks involving the EU, G7, and NATO, President Lee's trip to South America signals a fully fledged diplomacy with the region amid a complicated geopolitical environment. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News, Brasilia.
President Donald Trump has paused U.S. strikes on Iran for a second straight night, saying he wants to give diplomacy more time while keeping military options on the table. The pause comes as Iran confirms back-channel talks with Washington are continuing through mediators, even as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insists Iran must abandon its nuclear program with or without a deal. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
President Donald Trump has paused the U.S. military strikes on Iran for a second consecutive night, saying he wants to give diplomacy more time, even as Washington insists that all military options remain on the table. Speaking on Fox News on Sunday, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Mike Waltz said the U.S. leader is giving talks some space, while stressing that the pause should not be seen as a decision against further military action. Waltz also dismissed reports that the administration is concerned about dwindling air defense missile stockpiles, saying the U.S. military has all the resources it needs to continue operations if necessary. Iran also signaled a temporary easing of tensions, with an Iranian military spokesperson saying Tehran has halted its retaliatory attacks, while the country's foreign ministry confirmed that indirect communications with the United States are continuing through mediators, including Qatar and Pakistan. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Esmail Begay said diplomatic channels remain active despite escalating tensions. However, he accused Washington of violating a previous memorandum of understanding, calling it the third diplomatic betrayal by the United States. He said Iran remains committed to defending the country unless the U.S. changes its position. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the conflict with Iran will only end when the Iranian regime either falls or is weakened enough to abandon its nuclear program. In an interview with Fox News on Sunday, Netanyahu said Iran must end its nuclear ambitions with or without a deal, arguing that recent U.S. and Israeli strikes have set Tehran's nuclear program back by several years. He also warned that a nuclear-armed Iran would pose a direct threat not only to Israel, but also to the United States, adding that Israel will continue working closely with Washington to prevent that outcome. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung says Korea should keep its fuel price caps and fuel tax cuts in place until global oil prices stabilize. Chairing a virtual meeting with senior aides from Brasilia on Sunday, he called for preemptive measures to limit the impact of volatile oil prices on inflation, following heightened tensions between the United States and Iran. He also instructed officials to prepare additional support measures if conditions worsen. The president further ordered a crackdown on market manipulation, including hoarding and price fixing, involving not only fuel but also other essential consumer goods. Global oil prices dropped nearly 5% on Monday as Middle East tensions showed signs of easing after the U.S. paused further strikes on Iran. Bloomberg data showed Brent crude down roughly 5% as of 8:30 a.m., trading at around $92 a barrel. Earlier in the session, it fell as much as 7%, briefly dropping below $90 a barrel. The global benchmark has climbed more than 25% this month, surging above $100 a barrel last week as the U.S. Iran conflict spread from the Strait of Hormuz to the Red Sea. North Korea has slammed the latest ASEAN Regional Forum chair statement that reaffirms the goal of the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. In a statement carried by the Korean Central News Agency on Monday, Kim Yo-jong called the declaration pathetic and said North Korea's nuclear capabilities would continue to advance without pause. The criticism follows the ARF chair's statement released on Monday. On Friday, which expressed concern over Pyongyang's nuclear and missile programs and urged compliance with UN Security Council resolutions, dialogue and denuclearization. Kim argues the declaration ignores North Korea's constitution, which defines North Korea as a nuclear weapon state, and insists that no outside pressure or rhetoric would change its current course. Korea's National Election Commission received more than 70 requests to revise voter turnout figures on the day of the country's June local elections. According to election records, correction requests came from nearly 60 election officers, with some corrections increasing vote totals by more than 6,000 ballots and other changes being made up to 12 hours after the errors occurred. Election guidelines require detailed explanations and approval before any revisions are made, but many of the revisions reportedly had vague reasons such as correction due to omitted entry or simply change in voter count. A joint police prosecution investigation is examining whether additional undocumented changes were made. This comes as the National Election Commission opens its first hearing into election appeals related to the June 3rd local election. The main opposition, People Power Party chairman, is expected to personally present arguments focusing on alleged irregularities in Seoul, Incheon, and Gyeonggi-do Province. The 48th session of the UNESCO World Heritage Committee is underway in the southern port city of Busan. On Saturday, the committee approved the second phase extension of Korea's Korean Tidal Flats World Heritage Property, expanding one of the world's most important coastal ecosystems. Our Cho Young-eun reports.
UNESCO's World Heritage Committee has approved the significant boundary modification of Korea's Ketbar, Korean Tidal Flats, adding 4 new ones to the existing World Heritage property. With the expansion, it now comprises 6 component sites, adding to the original locations, Seocheon, Gochang, Sinan, and Bosong, Suncheon, first inscribed in 2021 for their outstanding universal value. The newly inscribed sites include Seosan in Chungcheongnam-do Province and Gohung, Muan, and Yeosu in Jeollanam-do Province.
Korea's tidal flats have once again been recognized as one of the world's greatest marine ecosystems. Stretching along the country's southwestern coast, they also serve as vital stopover habitats for migratory birds traveling between Oceania and Central Asia.
The decision underscores the global ecological importance of Korea's tidal flats within the West Sea ecosystem and the East Asian Australasian flyway, one of the world's most important migratory bird routes.
This inscription is both a great honor and the beginning of our responsibility to preserve this invaluable natural heritage for future generations.
The International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN, says the boundary modification directly addresses recommendations made by the committee following the original inscription in 2021 by making the protected area stronger and better connected as a whole group. The IUCN also noted that the site benefits from a comprehensive legal framework, integrated governance, effective monitoring systems, and the active participation of local communities, describing community support as one of the site's greatest long-term strengths. The committee concluded that the expanded property fully satisfies the UNESCO Criterion 10, recognizing its exceptional biodiversity.
The nominated property would substantially increase the number of bird species and the wider marine biodiversity. The 5 nominated component parts support numerous globally threatened species and internationally important bird populations.
With the latest inscription, Korea now has 17 UNESCO World Heritage properties, including 15 cultural heritage sites and 2 natural heritage sites, further strengthening its contribution to the protection of the world's shared heritage. With the official approval of the Korean Tidal Flats expansion, Korea has strengthened its commitment to protecting the valuable coastal ecosystem. The UNESCO World Heritage Committee continues in Busan through July 29. 조영은, Arirang News, Busan.
Gyeonggi-do Province has achieved its public RE100 Vision, powering all public institutions entirely from renewable energy sources and much earlier than expected. This milestone was made possible by transforming building walls, windows and even vacant public land into mini solar power plants. Cha In-kyung reports.
Here at the Gyeonggi hybrid town, where the Gyeonggi provincial office is located, the building's exterior walls, windows, and various surfaces are integrated with solar power technology. Generating over 1 megawatt of electricity, it stands as the nation's largest solar cluster integrated into a building.
Gyeonggi-do Province has supported the construction to help the domestic solar industry gain export competitiveness and secure a leading position in the global market.
Near the West Suwon and Waram interchanges, a 5.2 megawatt solar power plant has been constructed on vacant public land. This project features a participatory model in which residents directly invested in the construction and shared the earnings. Currently, about 11,000 residents across 26 cooperatives jointly own the plant. Since declaring its public RE100 Vision in 2023, Gyeonggi-do Province has been driving initiatives to transition all electricity used by public institutions to renewable energy. The vision aims to spearhead the expansion of RE100 into the private sector by utilizing idle public spaces, such as rooftops and parking lots owned by Gyeonggi-do Province, its public agencies, and municipal governments. As a result, Gyeonggi-do Province has surpassed its target as of this past April, installing 28.5 megawatts of solar capacity. This accounts for 101% of the total electricity consumed by its public institutions. Building on this success, the province plans to expand this renewable energy transition model across all 31 cities and districts within this jurisdiction. Cha In-kyung, Arirang News.
This is the world now. In Germany, police have shot and killed the man suspected of carrying out Saturday's deadly van attack near Berlin's Pride festivities. Investigators tracked the suspect to a garden plot on Sunday and then shot him as he charged them with a knife. The manhunt came after a van plowed into people in Tiergarten Park during the city's Pride Festival on Saturday night, killing at least 1 person and injuring 29, with some of those people reportedly stabbed. Germany's interior minister described the suspect as a 21-year-old German-born citizen of Lebanese descent with a long criminal history and links to Islamist extremism. Chancellor Friedrich Merz vowed Germany will stand firm, calling it an attack on the country's open, liberal society. In France, wildfires are closing in on Bordeaux, forcing thousands to evacuate. France's interior minister on Sunday called the situation, quote, unprecedented, saying the fire is not under control and is heading straight for the city, now roughly 15 kilometers away. France has evacuated about 220,000 people so far. Spain also faces wildfires with more than 75,000 evacuated and another 30,000 told to shelter in place. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez visited Avila, where more than 50,000 hectares were burned. Neighboring countries are pitching in to fight the wildfires. Greece and Italy have flown in firefighting planes. Portugal has sent over 100 personnel, and Turkey has 2 more aircraft on the way. The UK's new Prime Minister Andy Burnham said he, quote, will always put Britain's interests first, adding any leader has to be ready to challenge even U.S. President Donald Trump when the national interest demands it. His comments come on Sunday in his first major interview since taking office last week, becoming Britain's 7th Prime Minister in 10 years. Burnham ruled out an early election before 2029 and said London will hit NATO's defense spending goal of 3.5% of GDP by 2035. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky will be Burnham's first foreign visitor, meeting him on Monday at a naval base where over 200 Ukrainian troops have trained. In India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is launching a task force to fix the exam system after weeks of youth protests over leaked exam papers. India's education minister stepped down on Saturday over the exam leaks, which impacted millions of students. Modi says he wants a system that's transparent and tech-driven. Officials also agreed to overhaul exams, drop charges against protesters, and pay families of students who died by suicide over the leaks. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
The monsoon rains have stepped aside, making way for a prolonged stretch of dangerous summer heat. Southern Korea is once again facing near 40-degree temperatures, and today's heat will be just as intense, with a heat wave emergency warning being issued in those regions. And this warning is issued when even healthy people are at risk of serious heat-related illnesses. Meanwhile, scattered showers of 5 to 60 millimeters are in the forecast for central parts of Korea through tonight. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to 33 degrees Celsius, Gwangju at 35 degrees, and Gyeonggi-do will be scorching hot at 38 degrees. And even after any showers pass, the humidity will remain high, making it feel even hotter. The extreme heat is not going away anytime soon, so please limit outdoor activities during peak afternoon hours and stay hydrated.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.